Sorry, Twitch. I apologize. I didn't unmute my microphone. So to repeat what I said, just because I used Twitch's video to make the YouTube video, we are doing a satin stitch. I am carrying my thread behind my work, but I will be stitching over the top of it, so I'm not terribly worried. So we're coming up at the top left corner, we're going down into the bottom left corner, and then we're going to do our little guidelines. If it was a bigger area to satin stitch, I'd be doing more guidelines, but it's a pretty tiny little area, so we don't need to do a lot. And then we're going to go back and fill all that in. Oh, thanks for the follow on Twitch. We Mrs. Winter. I need to put my phone on silent because it keeps buzzing. It's making the video go crazy. Alright, so that's our tiny little satin stitches. That's all we're going to do for that. Thanks for making crafty content. I'd love to watch it. No worries. Alright, I'm going to flip over my work. And look what I remembered to do. I trimmed that crazy long thing that was there. I felt very smart. Oh, that's a cute emoji. What is it? Looks like a little cat in a blanket. Oh. Okay, so we got our little tree trunks. I'm going to take that off my needle and clean up all this floss that I got here. I got all this brown that I had to undo. Okay, so now that was one whole stitch. Good job, everybody. The next thing we're going to do is a straight stitch, which is, that's what it is, cozy cat. Aw. Then the straight stitch is basically a satin stitch, except we're not going to be going straight up and down and following like one direction. Because the trees are triangles, we're going to be going around. We're also not going to be starting and stopping in exactly the same spots. So that is why I labeled them separately in the pattern. So to begin with, we are going to start with our white. You can either have white or blank. Blank, and just to be clear, white and blank in DMC terms are exactly the same color, unless you've got a really, really, really old one from like your grandparents or something like that. A random straggle of floss. They might not be exactly the same. You might have like a different batch, which is very common, especially from older threads. But if you get one that's from like 3 years ago that says white, and then you've got one that's from this year that says blank, they're exactly the same. I had to look that up myself because I was very confused. So I just wanted to clarify that for everybody. You can also use like DMC 5200, or you could use DMC 3865 or something like that, just as long as it's one of the really whites. I've got my 2 strands, and this is why it's going to take a while, because we are wanting to just use only 2 strands. It might be really, really tempting to do something like 3 or 4 strands so that it covers it quicker, but trust me, it's going to look really chunky and not nice at all. So I recommend 2 strands. You could do 1 if you really wanted to and make it look nice and flat, but that might be going a bit overboard. Okay, so I'm coming up at the top of the left tree, and then these little like squiggles that I've done, they are whatever you want to do. If you want to do multiple bits, sorry, the squiggles are showing me where the white is. I'm going to be doing these 2 greens as well, and these ones I'm going to be freehanding. So underneath the green, underneath the white, oh, my little sticker came off. I might just quickly write that number down while I talk. Underneath the white is going to be the lighter green, and underneath the lighter green and above the white on the second bit is going to be the darker green. 9, 3, 5. So it'll be like this, then this, then this. Let's move that down for YouTube. So the white I want to fill in with my little squiggles, and then I'm going to do some green that I will freehand to like in between, if that makes sense. And then the green I'll fill in at the bottom and then in between here. So you can do whatever squiggle lines you want, as long as they kind of look branchy, if that makes sense. Then you'll be set. Again, just a reminder, if you're on Instagram and you've got any questions, you can ask them in the little question box. I can see my phone screen. But basically, I just want to fill in my little triangle with what we call straight stitches. I don't want to keep coming up at the very tip here, else it's going to look really, really like fat and chunky right at the tip of the tree. And that is partially why we are using just 2 strands, because we do want to try and come up at the tree, otherwise you'll get this like little fishbone look. I'm going to be filling that in right at the end. And it doesn't have to be a certain direction, it doesn't have to be in a certain order. Like with the fishbone you had to do left then right then left then right. With the straight stitch it needed to be all like vertical in this case. This can be however you need to fill it in so that it will look flat in the end. I hope that makes sense. Once I've done this little tree top, I will grab my demo piece and show you what I mean. This is sort of trial and error as well. If you don't get it looking perfect the first go, that's normal. I would be elated for you if you did. I certainly didn't with my test stitch, but I've had practice now, so I'm happy with that. So I actually did, and this is why I know, and I'm speaking from experience, I actually did the white with 3 strands on my test stitch, and then I reduced it down for the greens to 2 strands. This is not sharp and pointy, I'm just using it because it's better than my finger, because my finger will try and focus, as you can see. Anyway, so it doesn't really matter how your points are looking right now, because we're going to use the lighter green to define them a lot, and then same with the bottom bit, we're going to use the lighter green underneath and then the darker green on top of the white to define them and make them look like pointier. Hopefully that makes sense. Alright, so to save on floss, I'm going to, where's my needle? Yeah, first find my needle. I'm going to do the 3 tips of the trees, and then I'm going to come down and do the middle bits from right to left. You can do whatever order you want, of course. But basically just stitch it until you're happy with how it looks. and Bob's your uncle. Tell me if that is an Australianism, by the way, because I don't think I've ever heard an American say that. You guys have to tell me whenever I do an Australianism, because I never know until someone tells me. And honestly, when someone tells me, it's obvious to me at that moment then, because then I like remember back to times I've said it in front of Americans and gotten just a blank stare. It's not an American thing. Okay. Well, it basically just means like, oh my god, what does it mean? It means like you're hunky dory. Is that an Australianism as well? I don't even know. It means you're set. You've done good. Okay, I need to do one that covers the top because I'm not happy with how this is looking here. So I'm coming in up there. I've heard Bob's your uncle before. Maybe it's a Midwest thing. Okay. I don't think it's an American thing. I have never heard that before. Now that's American. Hunky dory. Okay. I would have thought hunky dory was an American one. There we go. I like that. Flattening it down helps too. Just like wiggling the floss. Alright, I'm going to do the next one, and then I'm probably going to run out of floss before I get onto the bottom points. Hunky dory, I've heard of that one before. Okay. I've heard Bob's your uncle on British TV and show movies. Okay. Well, I mean, Australians are just convicts from the British, so well, we descended from convicts. We're not all convicts. I should point that out. Okay, I'm going to do one from the tip. And I'm going to basically just like lay my floss down to see how I want it to cover before I figure out where to put my needle in. There we go. So that's our little tree tops. I don't recommend you do too many lines of white through it if you do decide to like play around with it, because this bit is actually a little bit trickier than the tops of the trees. So what I'm doing is kind of just making the same kind of guidelines I did for the satin stitch, but I'm doing it between the peaks of the zigzags. And that just kind of helps me to be able to fill in again, like with the satin stitch, so that it has good coverage. I'm going to have to get some more floss in a sec. Try and fill in a couple of those little gaps I've just made. Come on. There we go. And one other thing to keep note is whatever you do on the sides, you can either do like really rough kind of tree edges if you want to, do that style. But if you're wanting to keep the same kind of triangle shape, like what I've done. Oh, hang on, I've got floss attached to my arm. There we go. Then you want to try and keep your lines pretty straight. Obviously the front tree, it's going to be a bit more lenient, but your edges here and here, you'll need to just keep them in mind to try not to do like what I've done here, where it's a little bit like bumpy. It still looks tree-like, so you don't have to be crazy about keeping it super straight, but just something to remember. All right, I'm going to flip over my work and tie off this bit of floss before I completely run out. Oh, I lost one of the strands. Where did my scissors go? Oh, over here. So you guys need to tell me what we should work on tomorrow if we manage to finish these trees today. Tell me what section you're looking forward to learning, and I'll see if I can make it work for tomorrow, because as I said yesterday, there's a couple of areas that we have to do after some sections. But if there's a stitch that you're looking forward to doing, I can at least like make sure that we work on the stitch prior, for example, to get to it sooner. Hopefully that makes sense. Because otherwise, we are likely going to do the beanie tomorrow. Not all of the beanie, but some of the beanie. I can't get my knot to happen on my floss. There we go. Okay. Just loaded my needle again. And we shall continue. Oh. Let go. I was going to say the beanie. Okay, cool. Ow! That was my finger. Oh, I made it bleed. Give me a sec. Usually I'm clever enough to remember to bring some band-aids to my desk before I stitch along, just in case. But not today. Well, not this stitch along, I should say. I'll just have to keep my finger away from my work for a couple of minutes. One good thing about this straight stitch for this tree, or these trees, not just this tree, is it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be, I mean, the whole thing doesn't have to be perfect. Just remember that this is for fun. This isn't like a commission. This isn't, I mean, it might be for you, but this is to learn stitches, basically. So this can be rough. This can be fun, and it should be fun, but it is also, this is a tree. If it doesn't look perfect, that's okay, because trees have branches and leaves and they stick out, and sometimes they break and all of that. So like I wanted the tops of my trees to look nice and flat, but this looks like lots of different little branches to me. So that's why I've moved on and I'm happy with it. Sometimes we just need to hear reminders like that. So yeah. Okay, we're making good time. I assumed that we would probably go for the full hour today, just because this is a bit tedious. Today is a good day to ask any questions that might not be related to this stitch. I think I'm starting to lose my voice again. But it's, yeah. This is also kind of known as thread painting. Just doing a bunch of straight stitches. Like if you follow people that make amazing portraits of people's pets or like houses and things like that, a lot of the time they're just coming in and out. They're not doing any fancy stitches. They're just most of the time using one strand. Just a reminder, we're using 2 strands right now, but they're just going in and out and slowly, very slowly building up the work. And using one strand is a really good idea when you're wanting to try and make floss combine and like, yeah, look like it's been painted basically, which is why it's called thread painting. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I'm just going to fill in a couple of little spots as I go back over to the next tree. And obviously when you're using one strand, it's super tedious. It's super slow, but it's super fine. So you are able to like blend the floss so much easier. I have a washing question. It seems embroidery would be more finicky to wash than cross stitch. What are your thoughts on that? It's not, in my opinion. I hand wash all my work. As you can see, I've got the telltale blue pen marks, which, as far as I know, indicate that it's a water-soluble pen, because I think heat erasable pens are usually pink or black, as far as I know. But anyway, I use a water-soluble pen on my work. I've got a heat erasable pen and I hate it. I have tried to use it a few times and I don't know if I'm just not willing to like blast my work so that my hands burn when I hold it, but whenever I've used it, it's never erased completely. So yeah, I hand wash all my work once I'm done, and it's the same as a cross stitch really. It's actually a little bit easier because it's flexible. I don't do embroidery pieces that are full coverage, but a cross stitch that's full coverage is not very malleable. It doesn't flex very well. So yeah, I feel like washing an embroidery piece, as long as you're tying your knots really well at the back, and you're gentle while you wash it, then it's just as easy as a cross stitch. for some of the more delicate stitches, such as a cast-on stitch, or maybe a bullion knot. If you're doing it very loosely, you definitely want to be gentle when you're washing something that has stitches like that. But like, I'll just stop for a second. This was my first stitch along, so this is simply florals, and I mean that big flower in the middle is in exaggerated cast on stitches, and I washed that, and it sits, as I stitched it. Needs a little bit of dusting. I haven't been able to hang it up, so I haven't dusted it for a little while. But yeah, they're robust stitches. As long as you don't like pull a single strand, then it sits the way you want it to sit. A lot of the stitches you may not notice actually tie knots in themselves. Hopefully that answers your question. I recommend washing work, by the way. That's exactly the stitch I was thinking of. I didn't wash mine because I was chicken. Thanks for showing that one. No worries. Yeah, I definitely recommend washing your work regardless of whether you've drawn on your fabric or not. I always draw on my work, even with cross stitch, because I grid my stuff. Like I've got one more piece that's nearby me right now, which is not a great example. Actually, I've got this one. I'll show you this one just quickly, and then we'll get back to it. So this is a good example of a cross stitch that I've drawn on. I draw my grid on everything. So this is a 10 by 10 grid, and this is how I keep track of where I am in a piece. Otherwise, I would be a terrible cross stitcher, to be quite honest, because I just, whenever I try to count freehand with cross stitch, I fail dismally. I just forget how to count to 10. It's ridiculous. So my point is, regardless of whether you draw on a piece or not, washing it is really good. It gets rid of all the dirt. It lets your fabric sort of resettle, especially if you've been sitting it in a hoop or in a Q-snap. And it doesn't have to be scary. Some people put their stuff in the washing machine. That scares me, I'll be honest. I could never do that. That frightens the shit out of me. Okay, I'm going to go back to the middle tree. I'm going to just do a little bit more work on some of these areas. But yeah, washing shouldn't be scary. It should be good. Keeps your work nice and clean, and it makes it look very crisp in the end. Especially embroidery, because you're not doing it on Ada. I wish I had the patience to do more cross stitch on even weave, because it looks so pretty. Alright, that's our white. Whoops, I'm just banging my phone on the way around. But yeah, I guess the main thing with washing embroidery is to just make sure that your knots are good. That's usually why I double knot. And worst comes to worst, you just unpick the thing that comes undone and you do it again. Which would suck, but I feel like it's worth it. Alright, next one. We're going to get the light green. I don't have a big cut of it here, but it'll work for now. So if you've joined in after I was talking about the way we're going to do the two different greens, I will go over it again. The little lines on the pattern, oh, I can't do my knot, there we go. The lines on the pattern just indicated where the white would go to match my piece. Obviously, again, you can do whatever the hell you want. It's your work, it's your piece, blah de blah. But if you're wanting to copy what I've done, the marks just showed where the white should sit. The green, we are going to freehand. If you don't want to freehand, then just draw some more squiggles. You're going to be covering it up or washing it out or whatever. But the green, the light green is going to sit underneath all the white bits, and the dark green is going to sit on the bottom and on top of the second bit of white. So to start with the green, I'm literally just going to thread paint. The good thing to do is to poke through your white in certain sections, and that way you get a really good coverage with no like holes, basically. It also breaks the strands a little bit, and it makes it look like the peaks are sharper and more realistic. The light green is really the only one that we're going to freehand, because once we've done the light green, then the rest of the tree is dark green. You can also use the dark green, once we get to it, to define this light green a bit more. So you can probably notice that my white has totally changed shape on this tree just because of how I've stitched the light green. I'm also, hopefully you can see what I'm doing, I'm dragging my needle up from where I've come up to where I want it to poke in, so that I'm not really like overlapping, like stitching like this in a certain area, and that way it'll blend nicer. So that's that tree. Let's do a really long light green bit here. I'm kind of doing the same thing with the satin, as the satin stitch, where I'm doing my little guidelines. I kind of have a rough idea of where I want the peaks to go for the green. I'm going to have to change my floss in a minute. Alright, I just got to flip over my work. I didn't have enough green. I should have stopped a stitch or two earlier. It's so hard to do from this distance for me. Okay. Should have left more floss. That was tricky. Okay, we'll get some more green. Zoom. So remember that we're using 2 strands, or 1 if you want to just do 1. Oh, excuse me. I have a runny nose. Oh, that reminds me. I'm hoping it will not affect me too much, but I am getting a vaccination booster on Thursday, finally. And I've been told that the booster has been really rough on a lot of people. So, if I'm struggling on Friday, because I'm getting the booster after the session on Thursday, I will let everyone know on Instagram that I will have to cancel the stitch along for Friday, and then hopefully I'm back on my feet. And then it'll be another Monday break because my kids don't have school this coming Monday as well as this previous Monday. Don't really know why, but I think it's like a teacher day or something. Who knows? Hopefully they know. But yeah, hopefully I'll be fine and it'll all be as per usual, but just a heads up. I will post this in my stories after we're done here, because this is buried pretty deep in the video. I don't think necessarily everyone will hear it, and it's pretty relevant. I may have to cancel my stream too, depending on how quickly it goes through my system if I end up struggling. But wish me luck. I'm a needle phobe. I don't remember the technical term, but I've at least taught myself how to get needles without making it 10 times worse. That took about 20 years to figure out, by the way. Nah, maybe not that long. Maybe about 15 years. And here I am, sitting here with a needle. I just realized the slight irony. Alright, for this one, I'm going to shift over the white so that I'm going underneath it. And that way, and of course, sorry, that we're starting with the bottom now. And this is going to be splayed even more so than the white was. Do a really long one here. Alright, we'll fill in the gaps. Ow, that was my finger in like the same spot. Ow. Dag nabbit. So hopefully, if you're up to where I'm up to, where you've started really combining two colors, you'll notice that the white that we've done looks a lot nicer because we're kind of piercing the white a little bit with the green. It's sort of flattening the stitches a little bit. And once we get to the brown, dag nabbit is an American thing. Okay. Thank you. That's funny. I forgot what I was saying. Oh yeah, once we get to the dark green, you'll notice that because we're splitting from the top side of the white, it'll flatten it down even more so. But a reminder that this doesn't have to be perfect. No tree is absolutely perfect. And a tree that is perfect for its flaws. And I want to do bigger ones for this front tree. Ones being stitches, by the way. Oh, man, I just noticed the time. I was hoping that we'd get through all of this today. I'd love to have the trees finished. And I'm going as fast as I can without stabbing myself constantly, that is. I don't want to make homework, because then that makes homework for me. And I've had enough of homework. I did my time at school. Alright, so just a reminder, we are stitching over the top of this one. We're going to follow the line that we drew. And just like ignore where it's cut in. I'm still on the white. I will definitely have homework. Ah. Well, I don't want to set any extra homework then. Hopefully you remember all the little tidbits I've given you. I just realized I was talking about the booster on Thursday, and that's tomorrow. Am I actually getting it tomorrow? I'm going to look at my calendar quickly. I don't want to do it tomorrow. My week's all messed up because Monday was a day off for the kids at school. Drats. Oh well. We'll just have to have a day like the stem stitch where it overlaps into 2 days. I want to get this light green done at least, and then we'll stop. So in case anyone doesn't understand why I'm like, oh no, the time. My previous stitch alongs, I tried to make sure that each day was at least an hour long, but this time it was a bit too much for me mentally. So this time I'm trying to make sure that I keep each day within 30 to 60 minutes. Some days I have to stick to 45 at the very most, because I've got an appointment or I've got to pick up my kids from school. But yeah, I could conceivably continue going today, but I want to stick to my own little rules that I set, because boundaries and all that. Alright, and before I get started on the next tree, I gotta get some more floss. So to do the end of a floss, I just run my needle through the stitches a couple of times, the back stitches, not back stitching, but the stitches on the back, and then tie a knot in the floss, just because we were talking about how to secure your work properly. Okay, let's finish these this green. I was going to say let's finish these trees, but no, we're not going to do that. I got a very inappropriate song stuck in my head. I'm not going to sing it. It is likely no one would know what it is anyway. I like to try not to swear during my stitch alongs, because I like them to be family friendly. I swear on my stream, and if you know me in real life, I swear a lot because I'm Australian. It's just part of our vocabulary. But I like to try and keep my stitch alongs family friendly. And yes, the song I have in my head has got a lot of swearing in it. Didn't put my phone back in a very good spot. Might need to get a new phone tripod thingy. I've got one that attaches to my desk, like the arm clamps onto my desk. And it's pretty good. It's just getting a bit old. I've also got one for my camera, obviously. If you're on Twitch/YouTube, you'll be looking at that through my camera. I've got a lot of stuff. That reminds me. I should post the photo that I got my husband to take of me last week. Of course, he didn't do a vertical photo because he's a noob. But I'll post that in my stories, and you guys can get a laugh out of how ridiculous my setup looks. Okay, so I'm looking at, just to explain my train of thought, I'm trying to look at where this line for this tree is, and I'm not gonna do any of the dark here so that it sits like in amongst all of this bit here. So I'm gonna fill up this area with this light green, because otherwise 1 or 2 stitches of the dark green is just going to look a little bit strange. And then, because it'll look like it's blending in with this tree. And then, when we get to the dark green, it will cover up nicely and it'll fill up any gaps that might be there. So again, I'm just going to like shift over the white on the front tree to get my green in for the the tree behind it. I don't have anything to say, I'm sorry. It's all just the same thing. It'll be good to get the trees done. I was very happy with finishing them when I was working on the test stitch, because it is a little bit boring. It's definitely not exciting to watch, so I apologize. But I couldn't really think of another way to do them Christmassy styled, not Christmas, wintry styled. Alright. Just over here enjoying the ASMR of thread being pulled through fabric. Nice, yes, I do like that to myself. But I got my headphones on, so I don't hear it very well. Alright, that's the light green. Tomorrow we will do the dark green. And then we'll move on to some of the beanie, which is over here. Whoops, up here. We can't do all of the beanie. We'll be doing like the inside bit. We won't be able to do the band and the pom-pom. We have to do them another day. So that is the top of the hour. That's great timing. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. If you've got any questions, hit me up, write a comment, whatever is easier for you. Otherwise, I will see you all tomorrow, same time. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.